Hey everybody, this is JD Gaming, back today with a rebuild of Psychics. That's right, you heard it here, folks. This is going to be kind of a revamped look at classic Banish Psychics, along with some of the new toys that we've recently received, integrated into what I hope is a seamless control strategy. If I go through just very briefly what Psychics have been for me, Emergency Teleport was a very special card for me as a player because I went from someone who had just watched the show as a kid and, traded his elemental heroes on the school playground with his friends to really kind of being hesitant. When I saw the synchros hit the scene, I wasn't really sure I liked the direction the game was going, as the memes go, no synchros, no exceeds, no pendulums, Honestly, I don't feel like I was that bad, but it was definitely a big part of my life in Yu-Gi-Oh! At least, where I wasn't sure if I really wanted to adopt all this new stuff. That is until I found out about Emergency Teleport, how that's able to function, the cool new monsters it's able to bring out, things like Naturia, Beast, and 𝗣𝗿cie, and ultimately when we got the Banish Psychics in Extreme Victory, things like Silent Psychic Wizard, Serene Psychic Witch, all of those things, they just gave me a new appreciation for what ultimately would be a glimpse into more of the competitive, complicated aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's been just the opening for developing this channel, meeting some really awesome people, both in person and online through this community, and I honestly wouldn't be here on this website today if it weren't for this theme. So it's always held a special place in my heart. And those of you keeping up with the community tab may remember that, a long time ago, I became, well, I guess not a long time ago, a year ago, became a pharmacist. Very recently, actually, I became a manager of a pharmacy, kind of running my own place, and it's been tough. I'm not going to keep it, from you guys or sugarcoat or anything. The reason I haven't been here is because I've been so busy. Like, last 10 days, I went to the pharmacy every single day except one, to give you an idea, and it wasn't out of a sense of, oh no, I'm afraid I'm not doing enough. It was like I wanted to do this. This was something that I didn't think I was going to feel quite this passionate about, but it just, what you see here, I guess, translated over really well to my life outside of the game as well. And while I'm thankful for that, I do realize I've been kept away from this game a bit more than I would have personally liked. So it's time to correct all of that. We've gotten a lot of cool toys to play around with since my last update of this deck, even though that was in the new era, in the late spring here. But essentially looking at new cards like PSY-Framelord Lambda that lets us integrate our PSY-Framegear Gamma into the deck without a hitch, or things like the brand new Apollousa, Bow of the Goddess, that basically is the modern day Light and Darkness Dragon lad that lets us set layer upon layer of monster negation into basically any combo deck that can, now hopefully stand a little bit better against the upcoming Nibiru Primal Being. So lots of really cool things that hopefully I'm going to do a decent job integrating into a control psychic build for you guys. So we'll borrow some of the old concepts, recycle them, and mix in some new spark here, and hopefully my excitement for this strategy and just the game in general through this strategy really translates to you guys. But I just absolutely love this deck, and I feel like it's a very fitting re-entry point to get back onto the swing of things with the channel here. So as always, it's going to be a let's build. I'll build the ground up, or build the deck from ground up for you guys, and basically explain my choices, reasonings for why things are there in the numbers they are, and important things I think are good to keep in mind as you play the strategy. But if you don't have time for that, just go ahead and click the description box down below. You'll find timestamps in the table of contents I always keep there. The last one there is the A to Z alphabetical profile you're probably used to on other channels that just has a list. And if you want to have, any additional information, check out the rest of the video where hopefully I did a decent job explaining some of that stuff. So long-winded intro, I know, but I had to get some of that stuff out of the way because I'm sure not everyone keeps track of the community tab. But anyway, without further ado, let's build Psychics. The first step in building any deck is to establish the theme and to build a core that supports that theme's goals. And today I want to share with you guys a very basic combo in kind of its crudest, least efficient form possible, and kind of point out some branching points that we can use as kind of launch pads for further combos, and we'll target the rest of the deck and fleshing that out at those certain points to make this basic combo much better. Starting off, we have 3 copies of our Predaplant Ophir Scorpio. This card is a very common sight on the channel, of course. It is a level 3 dark plant with 1200 attack and 800 defense that lets you, when normal or special summoned, send any monster from your hand to the graveyard in order to special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand or deck, except OP Scorpio. You can only use this effect of OP Scorpio once per turn, but you only need its effect once for this combo to work. And in fact, I'm going to show this very basic combo as if you had one OP Scorpio in hand and then any two monsters, one of which has to be a level 3 for a lot of your combos to work, but realistically, we're just going to pretend, let's say you open with all 3 of these, and 2 of these could be pretty much any monster in the deck. If we start off with a normal summon of our OP Scorpio, we can go ahead and yard a copy of any monster in order to go ahead and summon out our Predaplant Darlingtonia Cobra from our deck. Now, I'm not going to do anything in terms of positioning for the combo part here because it saves a lot of space on my screen here. As you can see, space is at a premium here, and we're just going to put it vertically, even if you would probably put this in defense position because Cobra's attack is 1000, its defense is 1500. But alas, when you summon this monster, it lets you go and add any polymerization or fusion spell card from your deck to your hand, which we will use now to add a copy of Brilliant Fusion from our deck to our hand. So stow that into our hand for a little bit later here, and then from there we can transform these 2 level 3 plant monsters into the link monster 𝗼𝗲𝗄𝗃, who has diagonal down arrows, a few cool abilities, but the coolest thing about this is you need 2 plant monsters to summon it, which we're doing right here, and you could tribute a monster that she's pointing to in order to basically duplicate Lone Fire Blossom's effect. That is, special summon any plant monster from our deck in defense position, as long as we're able to, again, release a monster that she's pointing to. So for right now, she's just going to be the best thing we can bring out using the 2 Predaplant monsters. We're going to go ahead now and activate and resolve our Brilliant Fusion. That lets us go and send any Gem Knight normal monster or effect monster just for the fusion summon of Gem Knight Seraph Knight, as you often see in these combos. I chose Lapis, but feel free to go ahead and change it to Obsidian if you so choose. The attack points don't matter. I just visually like seeing a vanilla monster because it's easier for me to pick out from the deck. After you play many games with this, you'll understand. And you just need the fact that it's level 3 in this strategy over level 4. Along with Performance Damage Juggler is my light monster of choice, and I'll get to why in just a second. And basically that lets us go ahead and summon out our Gem Knight Seraph Knight into one of the zones that the Jasmine points to. And sometimes, depending on where you go further in the combo, it may matter, but realistically right now, just need to put it in one of the zones. Seraph Knight will have 0 attack and defense thanks to the Brilliant Fusion, but we don't care about that. We just care that it's a level 5 body on board. It can be used for synchro plays, link plays, or even tributing for the Jasmine in order to make that play. And you get an additional normal summoner set when you have that Seraph Knight, which can further extend our combo, as you can imagine, when you have other cards in your hand. So for example, we can now use this extra normal summon, go ahead and play your extra monster that you have, or extra OP Scorpio here will do, and let's say tribute this guy off for the Jasmine, or you could even tribute off the Seraph Knight in order to go ahead and summon something off of our Jasmine. So with that, we'll go ahead and summon our Glow Up Bulb to the field, a level 1 Earth Tuner monster who has the ability to come back once per duel just by milling the top card of your deck to the graveyard. And now, this is where the choice in our light monster comes in. I chose Predaplant, Performance Damage Juggler, because this card has an ability that says, in addition to serving as a wall against damage by discarding from your hand to the graveyard, you can banish it from the graveyard in order to add a performance monster from your deck to your hand. That means Hat Tricker, and Hat Tricker says as long as there's at least 2 monsters total on the field between both players, you could special summon him to the board. And that means now we have all 4 of these monsters in play. Glow Up Bulb and Hat Tricker mean we can go ahead and synchro summon for level 5, and we're going to do that with 𝗍𝗶𝗲, the World Chalice Justiciar, a generic level 5 synchro tuner monster who has 1800 attack, 2100 defense, a bonus ability that says when she's sent to the graveyard, you can go ahead and special summon a World Chalice monster, which, yes, there is chosen by the World Chalice here, a vanilla level 3 psychic who does a decent job synergizing with the deck. I chose not to play it in this current build just because I didn't want to have too many bricks in the deck. It's not a total brick, it's like a conditional brick. Sometimes you could put it into play, sometimes you can't. But for the whole purpose of this combo, I only care about her on-summon ability, which lets me add World Legacy Succession to hand, which is basically Monster Reborn as long as you have arrows, and wouldn't you know, 𝗼𝗲𝗄𝗃 gives us arrows. Now, this combo can go in a different way. You could see right here, a level 8 synchro play is possible off of just these cards, as long as you had a level 3 monster that you extra normal summoned off the Seraph Knight. But I'm not even going to go do that. I'm just going to go ahead and turn all of my resources, so these 3 monsters, into playing the Apollousa, Bow of the Goddess. Now, when I mentioned that this card is like Light and Darkness Dragon, I meant that very much so. It's a level 4 Link monster that needs at least 2 monsters with different names, except tokens to summon. Has decided to use just Skull Dread arrows of up and all the downs, and it says you can only control 1. Okay, fair enough. Its effect makes sense. It says its original attack becomes 800 times the number of physical materials you used. In this case, we used 3, so that would give her 2400 attack. If you use 2 as the minimum, you get 1600, and if you used a full 4, you get 3200 attack. Those attack points matter because you can have her lose exactly 800 attack points anytime an effect monster effect activates 1 time per chain in order to just negate that effect. So she would go down, in this case, from 2400 to 1600, but then in a separate chain, you could go down to 800 and then 1 more time down to 0 if she's not killed in battle or some other way. This is very similar to Light and Darkness Dragon in that it is a once per chain effect, because otherwise it would chain to itself and then just decrease its own attack to 0 without doing anything, which is pretty silly. But it does mean that you're able to get rid of some annoying cards like hand traps, but then not deal with other cards that may be chained in that same link there, so do watch out for that. She is a powerful creature, but you don't want to rely exclusively on her. If possible, if you have something else, you may be able to get away with more, but she is very simply a lot of monster negation in many layers all in one card, and she opens up a lot of arrows. And that's where the last part of our combo comes in. We're going to activate our World Legacy Succession, our Monster Reborn, which lets us go ahead and special summon our Performage Hat Tricker, level 4 monster. And now by sending the top card of our deck to the graveyard, we can bring back Glow Up Bulb in order to make another level 5 synchro. But since we have all Earth monsters here, we could go ahead and summon Naturia Beast in order to have a 2200 attack level 5 synchro that says anytime a spell is activated, you could just mill the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard to negate the activation and destroy it. And so you can see here with no other cards besides, I started off in this example with 3 copies of Predator Plant Scorpio. We were able to get 3 layers of effect negation and basically infinite spell negation all into play, and that's not counting the 2 other cards we could have as extenders. That's not counting different cards being in the spots of the 2 Scorpios that I played in this specific combo. And you can see here now there are a lot of opportunities for us to make this deck even better. So first, let's jump back to our table now, shall we? Before jumping too far ahead, I do want to summarize the cards that we need in our deck in order to make this combo happen. So first of all, we're going to want to play a full 3 copies of our Predaplant Scorpio, because this is what gets it all going, and it's very convenient, as I always mention in these deck profiles, that Lone Fire Blossom has many of the same traits that we want in this. It's another level 3 plant monster, fire in this case, 500 attack, who has the ability to tribute any plant monster, including itself, in order to go and special summon a different plant from your deck. And since Scorpio activates on special summon, you could go ahead and certainly use Lone Fire Blossom, but you can also see how having an extra copy of Lone Fire Blossom in your hand might mean that extra normal summon for your Gem Knight Seraph Knight play becomes even better, because now you can turn that into any other monster you would like for a bigger combo yet to come. So from there, we're playing the 1 Darlingtonia Cobra, the 1 Brilliant Fusion it summons, or searches rather, and the 1 copy of a level 3 Gem Knight. Again, Obsidian is an option. The main reason we're going to choose level 3s will become evident in the next section here, but for now, do keep in mind we are trying to play on the synergy of level 3 monsters, and that will really minimize the impact of even drawing our Darlingtonia Cobra or our Lapis. From there, our Performage monsters are our Damage Juggler and our Hat Tricker. You could definitely play more copies of these, and you could even play a copy of Trick Clown if you would like. I did cut the Trick Clown for space purposes just because the majority of the time you're going to send your Damage Juggler and go for Hat Tricker, and should you draw the Damage Juggler, you could just discard it as the card off of your Scorpio, or you could go and normal summon this guy off of the Gem Knight Seraph Knight, and then once it's in the graveyard, still search your Hat Tricker. So lots of internal consistency in here. So essentially out of all this, the Darlingtonia Cobra and the Lapis are potential dead draws, but the performages I would not consider to be bad to draw. Similar thing with Glow Up Bulb. If you happen to draw it, you could put it into play with the extra normal summon, and you could even discard it if you really needed to for the Predaplant play if you have some other level 1 tuner, as we'll talk about later. And then finally, for the main deck portion of this, we'll play the 1 World Legacy Succession, better than Monster Born in this case, just because it is accessible and therefore predictable and reliable in getting our combo off. And then we will now talk about the extra deck portion of this segment here, where we have our 1 Aromatherapy Jasmine, 1 Gem Knight Seraph Knight, 1 𝗍𝗿 the World Chalice Justiciar, 1 Apollousa Bow of the Goddess, and 1 Naturia Beast to round out basically a third of our extra deck. Next, we're going to talk about some of the newer Psychic monsters from Savage Strike that kind of took this deck in a new direction after what feels like 5 years of stagnation with just the Banish Psychics we got in Extreme Victory. I'm talking about 3 copies of Psychic Wielder and 3 copies of Psychic Tracker. And I'm going to just show Psychic Wielder first just because these two have very similar abilities. They share a lot of traits. They're Earth level 3 Psychic monsters. This one has 600 attack and 0 defense. Tracker has 1600 attack and 600 defense. Tracker is a non-tuner, Wielder is a tuner, and they share the same initial ability, where if you control a level 3 monster other than a card with its same name, you could special summon this from your hand in defense position as a hard once per turn, but you are allowed to normal summon or special summon through other means additional copies, so very viable still when you draw extra copies of them and you have like the extra normal summon off of the Gem Knight Seraph Knight. Wielder has a bonus ability when he uses a synchro material, and being a tuner helps for this. You're able to go ahead and destroy a monster on the field, could be your own, so do watch out if you're playing on DevPro or something. It's very easy to accidentally do that. But you could snipe a monster whose attack is less than the synchro monster you summon's attack, and that's pretty good because now if you're going second or your opponent already has something established, you can go ahead and start breaking those pieces apart as you make your proactive plays. And you can also go ahead and use Tracker for a similar ability as well. This one's the non-tuner that says if you synchro summon with it, the monster you summon gains 600 attack, not as an activator or anything, kind of like a continuous or lingering type of effect. So let's say you go ahead and summon a monster like Stardust Charge Warrior, which is something that I've kind of loved and yet hated a long time ago, mainly because it was a wind monster. Mrs. Radiant weakened it, and it's like its ability lets it attack everything once each. The monsters it's attacking are all special summoned, but 2000 attack isn't very good. When you go down to 16, it's even worse. But when you go up to 2600, that's even better. And Stardust Charge Warrior ended up becoming one of my favorite level 6 monsters at the moment, up to the point where I'm actually playing this as my only level 6 monster in the deck because it's so flexible with its draw ability, and now the ability to snipe multiple link monsters and other special summoned bodies on your opponent's board. So Tracker and Wielder do a whole lot for the combo, especially because if you consider Tracker and Wielder, these are a tuner and a non-tuner level 3 that you can easily special summon as part of that initial combo we talked about. So let's say you have the 𝗍𝗿 in play, the level 5 tuner synchro. You can now tune it with Tracker in order to make a level 8 monster like 𝗍𝗿cie Savage Dragon. Or if you were to use the Wielder as a tuner, you could use it with the Gem Knight Seraph Knight and get the same result. And the reason that's such a big deal is 𝗍𝗿cie Savage Dragon is a 3000 attack level 8 generic synchro that says if it's synchro summoned, you could take a link monster you have in your graveyard, which will most likely be your Aromatherapy Jasmine, equip it to the card, and you do 2 things. First, you take half of the link monster's attack and boost this guy by it, so half of 1800 is 900. You have a 3900 attack boss monster in play for just your scrap monsters that you were able to throw together. In addition, you count the link rating of the monster equipped to it, in this case 2, and you give the 𝗍𝗿cie Savage Dragon counters equal to that link rating. In this case, you get 2 counters, and that means for each of those counters, once per turn, you can negate any card or effect that's activated. You don't destroy it, but it's still very powerful in getting an Omni-type negate on anything your opponent may throw at you, especially in addition to Naturia Beast and Apollousa. So you could see how having 3 copies of each Tracker and Wielder do wonders for that combo, allowing you to go for an additional monster potentially thanks to the special summon abilities of these, and of course normal summoning any extra copy you get as well thanks to Seraph Knight. And now you're able to establish a 𝗍𝗿cie Savage Dragon in addition to all this other stuff, which is just really, really powerful. Savage Dragon is just an amazing monster, and I'm definitely glad we finally have this as kind of an upgrade to our Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon that we were playing before. Next up, we have a true classic for Psychics. It's even on the mat. I'm talking about Overdrive Teleporter, folks. This behemoth of a Psychic monster is a light level 6 with 2100 attack, 1200 defense, and a very powerful ability that makes it so that you cannot special summon this card, because otherwise he'd be too overpowered. Lets you pay 2000 life points in order to summon exactly 2 level 3 Psychic type monsters. No higher, no lower, no more, no less. You can only use it, again, one time while this card's face up on the field, but this card opens the floodgates for so many amazing combos, because now you could put out a tuner and a non-tuner like the Tracker and the Wielder, go for that 2600 attack Stardust Charge Warrior, draw a card, pop a guy with less than 2600, and then snipe the rest of the guys in order to do some massive damage to your opponent's board. That's just the basic play off of nothing else, but I also like playing the single copy of Hushed Psychic Cleric from the traditional Banish Psychic deck, because this card I found, I didn't really miss it when I cut it to 2 in testing, and then I cut it down to 1. I'm like, well, Overdrive Teleporter still fetches it when I need, and honestly, that's the best time to use this card. It is a level 3 Earth with no attack, 2100 defense, and upon normal summon automatically shifts to defense, which is great. It lets you go ahead and banish a card from your graveyard by discarding a card from your hand. That card from the graveyard has to be a Psychic monster, but it can be any Psychic monster. Tuner, non-tuner, main deck, extra deck, could be Link, could be Synchro, could be anything. And then once you do, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can't miss timing with it because it's a when mandatory effect. You'll be able to special summon that monster to your board. So that's really cool in bringing back combo pieces, extending your plays further, synchro climbing with this, and now link climbing thanks to PSY-Framelord Lambda, which I'll talk about a little bit more down the line. So very cool that we finally have a Psychic Link 2 that's a lot more generic than Electromite, because let's be honest, this isn't a pendulum deck. We're not going to cram pendulums in here in order to play that, though I suppose it is possible to play some of these Psychic monsters in a Metal Foes variant, as I've kind of played around with in the past. But whole point of Cleric at 1 is now you have a very powerful non-tuner option that can potentially cycle some of the cards in your hand into extra summons onto your board, and that translation of hand advantage into field presence can really help make a bigger board yet. So Overdrive Teleporter, great in general with the deck, but I like the 1 copy of the Cleric in here as well, just to increase our odds of seeing some bigger plays. And goes to show, when you have a bunch of level 3 monsters, tuners and non-tuners, Trishula is an easy option for the extra deck as well, and Overdrive Teleporter helps facilitate that. You do need 3 monsters to summon it, so since it's 9, 2 non-tuners and a level 3 tuner make a lot of sense, and its 2700 attack is backed up by, of course, still one of the strongest effects on a single monster card, being able to banish any problematic card on your opponent's field, hand, and graveyard, all without targeting. So wouldn't play more than 1 of this, just because you do want the variety in your extra deck, but I still found when I cut this thing out of the deck, yeah, I see that I do like the power that it brings to this strategy, and it's something that I will still continue to play at 1. Next up, we're going to talk about some extenders that add a lot of power and flexibility to our deck. First off is actually something that honestly fits in the core, Emergency Teleport, a quick play spell that says you could special summon a level 3 or lower Psychic monster from your hand or deck during the end phase. It does get banished if you didn't use it, but this is such a flexible card. Only reason I'm kind of throwing it here is because as a 1 copy spell spot here, you can't reliably see it, but when you do see it, it is a very powerful option here. I also have the 1 Monster Reborn, although again, World Legacy Succession is the searchable version and therefore very powerful. Monster Reborn is able to bring back entire synchro monsters, link monsters for big plays, individual combo pieces, and don't forget, if your opponent ends up hitting your Lone Fire Blossom with Ash Blossom, you can Monster Reborn it right back and continue on playing as if this were a copy of Called by the Grave. So very flexible card. I definitely love seeing it as an extender and kind of a backup option as well. And then we're playing the Foolish Burial, which lets us go ahead and yard very powerful targets like our Glow Up Bulb, our Performage, Damage Juggler, and although those are, parts of our combo, it does fit in the context of the addition of Spore and 1-for-1 into the deck. Spore is another plant tuner monster, so you can fetch it off Lone Fire Blossom copies that you may be holding extras of. You could send it with Foolish Burial, or summon it with 1-for-1 by sending any other monster you'd rather have in the graveyard there with this card's effect. But Spore is really cool because it can start off as a level 1 tuner to make your Ib play, then it can come back from the graveyard by banishing either the Glow Up Bulb to become a level 2 tuner monster, or one of your level 3 plants in order to become a level 4 tuner monster. And that just gives you a lot of extra summoning power. If nothing else, it'll give you an additional link material that you can go ahead and make a bigger Apollousa Apollousa or something along those lines. Now, to finish out the main deck, we're going to start with some defensive options that I feel are necessary just to survive in this game these days. We're going to start off with, of course, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, staple, as everyone says, but it's even better here because while it is a powerful card in its own right, the fact that it is a level 3 tuner monster means it can be normal summoned as the extra play off of the Seraph Knight, and then you can tune it off of the Seraph Knight to make your Borreload Savage Dragon or some other level 8 Synchro. You could go ahead and have this be a level 3 body on board so that your tracker and wielder are viable options. It just has a lot of inherent synergy with what your deck is already trying to do, so Ash Blossom's even better here than it is in other strategies. In that note, we're going to go ahead and play 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Could play 3, but I felt it's so accessible with Overdrive Teleporter, E-Tele, and things like that, that it is very powerful and, you know, don't necessarily need 3. But in addition to it being the hand trap Ghost Girl that everyone knows and loves, this thing's a psychic monster who also for some reason has that same ability live while on the field. So if you happen to normal summon this as an extra play, or are able to bring it out with an OT or an ET, you're able to go ahead and just use its ability from there as well. Your opponent doesn't have to guess that it's there, but it's still annoying when you're able to bring it out for free, maybe as a quick effect through emergency teleport, or bring it back from the graveyard with something like Hushed Psychic Cleric. So definitely think 2 is a nice number for it. You don't see it too often now since, you know, you're able to go ahead and search it anyway, but now once you get it out, you can reuse it, keep it on board, do whatever you need to with it. It just synergizes very nicely with what your deck's trying to do by being a level 3 psychic tuner monster. Then I also like 3 copies of Called by the Grave. Originally I was playing 2, but I did bump this up to 3. Not only do you have things like your Predaplants, your Lone Fire Blossom, and your Overdrive Teleporter that you really want to go off through hand traps, but we're going to get a card called Nibiru down the line at the end of the week of this upload, actually. And I just want to make sure we're prepared for, you know, combo breakers and things that might end our day. So Called by the Grave, very flexible removal against hand traps and just combo shutting down against your opponent's grave options and sometimes even field options if they happen to have a duplicate copy of something. So very powerful card. I think it is worth playing at least the 2 copies of. If nothing else, definitely have some copies in your side so you're not totally shut down. And then the last cards we're playing in the main deck here are 3 copies of PSY-Framegear Gamma, along with, in my case, 1 copy of Driver, though I'll mention briefly in a second why it may be worth playing 2. So Driver is just a vanilla 2500 attack, 0 defense, level 6 psychic, so you could honestly send this with Brilliant Fusion if you already have access to that damage juggler, perfectly fine, gets the vanilla brick card out of your deck and makes it so that it's not a liability for you. But the whole reason you play this engine is because PSY-Framegear Gamma is Effect Failure with built-in destruction. It's a level 2 psychic tuner that says can only be special summoned. Doesn't have to be by its own effect, but it does not have the ability to be normal summoned or set. When your opponent activates any effect monster's effect while you control no monsters in play, you can go ahead and special summon this card from your hand, as well as a PSY-Frame Driver from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And that's cool because if you draw Driver, not terrible. If you yard Driver, not terrible. And of course, if it's in your deck, that's the best case of all. You could still summon it to your field, and now you have 2 bodies on board to block your opponent's attacks until the end of the turn when they're banished. Or if it's your turn, let's say you normal summon Lone Fire Blossom, tribute it, try to get its effect off, oh, opponent ashes it, you tributed your only monster off the field, now Gamma can go and come in since your field is empty, negate the Ash Blossom, bring out a Driver, and now you have 2 monsters all of a sudden, in addition to the rest of that combo that you can now make an extra Borreload Savage Dragon or bigger Link monsters just because you proactively did something during your turn, or I guess reactively did something that set up proactive things during your turn. So that's why this card is so awesome in this strategy, and it gets even better and viable because of PSY-Framelord Lambda, which we're playing 1 copy of. This brand new Link 2 monster from Battles of Legend is able to go ahead and be summoned off of any 2 monsters except tokens, so very flexible, much more so than Mrs. Radiant, which requires 2 Earth monsters, which, as you can kind of see from the composition of this deck, you do have some Earth monsters, but not enough that you can reliably always fall on 2 Earth monsters only. maybe you could summon the Charmer when it comes out, but that's another discussion for a different day. What matters is Lambda is extremely easy to summon, and it's a Psychic Link too, which means it can be brought back from the graveyard with your Cleric if you happen to link this off. So now you're able to bring back a bigger, more worthwhile monster off of that, or Monster Born or something along those lines. Its continuous ability lets you go and activate the effects of PSY-Framegear Gamma or some other PSY-Framegear monster, even if you already have a monster on your board. And that's powerful because now Gamma can be used even more in an annoying fashion, shutting down your opponent's combos when you make your proactive plays, and of course when your opponent's trying to stop you as well. So they're no longer safe from Gamma. If you bring this thing out, they're gonna have to assume you have Gamma and be ready to play around it at all times. And the extra ability it has is better for your next turn, or rather when you're playing it during your opponent's turn. And it basically says if your Gamma or some other psychic monster you control that's face up happens to be banished from the field, so Omega also fits this build, you're able to go ahead and add a copy of a PSY-Framegear monster from your deck to your hand. So ideally, if you were to play multiple copies of Driver, you'd be able to go use Gamma once with the Driver, they get banished, but now you can add another Gamma, and then you could proactively stop your opponent during your plays in order to, or rather during your turn, react to your opponent, bring out the two monsters again, and keep going from there. So that's an option why you may consider playing, even if it's citing the second Driver. But for right now, I did want to minimize the bricks. I ended up playing the one Driver with the same kind of theory that we had in ratios for Brilliant Fusion at 3 with 1 Garnet back in the day. You typically just want to see the Gamma, and if you resolve it once, that swing in tempo is usually enough to win you the game, or at least make it a very, very difficult uphill battle for your opponent to struggle through. The second Driver is more of a luxury, and you're not really playing Lambda just for that second ability. It's that first ability and just its versatility that you're playing this card for. So at the very least, definitely consider playing the PSY-Frame package now, because you have a monster that fits perfectly into the theme that is a welcome addition to the core Psychic strategy. And finally now, we will talk about the last few cards that we will need in order to flesh out our extra deck. So starting off, our last Link 2 is going to be Nightmare Phoenix. It could honestly be any Link 2 that's easy to summon. I even was playing a second copy of Lambda before, but technically Apollousa needs different names, and sometimes it comes up. I wanted the flexibility. One Lambda seemed to be sufficient in the strategy, so I played a Nightmare Phoenix, so now I have access to discard effect to destroy floodgates and other problematic back row as well. So my choice, that's why I chose the Phoenix. Then for our Link 4s, we have our Boral Bros, because Boral Load lets you steal stuff that you shouldn't, Boral Sword lets you win games that you shouldn't, and 𝗣𝗍𝗲 lets you draw so many cards that you're able to combo off. And you'll notice that it's very easy to bring out the 4 different monsters with different names onto your board. Our main combo can be branched and kind of reworked easily in order to bring this card out. And if you happen to already draw something like your, Gem Knight Lapis or something, or your Obsidian, you can go shuffle them back with 𝗣𝗍𝗲, draw new cards instead, and then, combo off from there with the extra special summon effect as well. So I still like the 𝗣𝗍𝗲. I think it is worth having as an alternative option to diversify your combo, make it more versatile. And then the last 2 synchro monsters I want to talk about are the Omega and the Zeta, level 8 and 7 synchros respectively. These guys have very similar abilities, being able to dodge from the field as a quick effect in order to either get rid of a card from your opponent's hand, or a special summon attack position monster, aka any Link monster your opponent may have on the field, and then they return in the next turn. Don't forget they also have recycling abilities. Omega is able to recycle itself back to the extra deck by taking any card from the graveyard and putting it back into the deck alongside it. Could also be an extra deck monster you want to recycle. Could be a combo piece your opponent needs to rely on. And Zeta has a similar thing now that says if it's in the graveyard, you can recycle it to the extra deck by taking a PSY-Frame card from your graveyard and adding it to your hand, which means you get an extra use out of Gamma as well. But don't forget, because both of these are psychic monsters, you could bring them back directly with something like your Hushed Psychic Cleric, giving you extra versatility thanks to the fact that these are psychic monsters. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of this deck as much as I did putting it together and just getting back into the swing of things with the channel with this strategy. So without further ado, let's jump into that main deck here. We have 40 cards with 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, double Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, lone Glow Up Bulb, lone Hushed Psychic Cleric, triple Lone Fire Blossom ironically, triple Overdrive Teleporter, 1 Performance Damage Juggler and Hat Tricker, 1 Predaplant Darlingtonia Cobra, triple Predaplant Ophir Scorpio, triple PSY-Framegear Gamma, triple Psychic Tracker, triple Psychic Wielder, and a single Spore. And then for our vanilla bricks, we have our Gem-Knight Lapis, which again could be Obsidian, and our PSY-Frame Driver. Then for spells, we have Brilliant Fusion, triple Called by the Grave, one 𝗼𝗍𝗲, one Foolish Burial, Monster Reborn, 1-for-1, and World Legacy Succession for, again, a 40-card main deck. And then for our extra deck here, we're taking a look at Link 2's in Aromatherapy Jasmine, Nightmare Phoenix, and PSY-Framelord Lambda, each at 3. Then we have for Link 3's, nothing, honestly. You just go Link 2 straight up into 4s. For 4s, we have Apollousa, Bow of the Goddess, Borrelode Dragon, and Boral Sword Dragon for the Boral Bros. Then we have Saryuja Skull Dread to wrap things up at 7 links. For synchros, we have 𝗼𝗍, the World Chalice Justiciar, and Naturia Beast at level 5. We have Stardust Charge Warrior at level 6. Level 7 is PSY-Framelord 𝗍𝗲. We have Borrelode Savage Dragon and PSY-Framelord Omega at level 8. And at level 9, the Mighty 𝗼𝗿cie, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, followed by, of course, our Lone Fusion, Gem-Knight Seraph Knight for our Brilliant Fusion combo. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.